Airplanes were supposed to be places where everyone followed the same rules, same seatbelt sign, same oxygen masks, same destination. But on Flight 782, equality never made it past the boarding gate. The cabin buzzed with that familiar pre-flight energy, overhead bins slamming shut, flight attendants smiling through rehearsed welcomes, passengers shuffling down the aisles searching for seat numbers like they were solving riddles. Row 14, window seat. Nia Thompson slid her carry-on beneath the seat in front of her and sat upright, smoothing the sleeves of her navy blazer. She didn't like wrinkled clothes, or attention, or confrontation. She liked order, which was ironic, considering what she did for a living. Nia glanced at her boarding pass again, just to be sure. First time flying this airline. First time flying since the promotion. She exhaled slowly. Across the aisle, a group of coworkers laughed loudly, clinking plastic cups already filled with champagne. A few rows ahead, a white-haired man reclined his seat aggressively, as if claiming territory. And then there was the pilot, Captain Robert Hawley. He stood near the cockpit door, greeting passengers with a hand on the bulkhead and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His uniform was crisp, his cap tucked under one arm like a badge of honor. When Nia met his gaze briefly, his smile faltered. Just for a second, long enough for her to notice. She looked away. The plane doors closed with a heavy thud, and everything changed. 20 minutes into boarding, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Hawley speaking. We're just waiting on final paperwork before pushed back. Sit tight." A few groans echoed. Nia reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. That's when she felt it. A presence. She looked up. Captain Hawley stood in the aisle beside her row. "Yes?" she asked politely. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his eyes moved to her phone, then to her bag, then back to her face. "Is there a problem?" she repeated. He smiled thinly. "You tell me." Confusion rippled through her. "I'm sorry." He nodded toward her bag. "That yours?" "Yes." "What's in it?" The question landed wrong. "Personal items," she said carefully. "Why?" A few nearby passengers leaned subtly closer, pretending not to listen. Captain Hale's voice hardened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out into the aisle." Her heart skipped. For what reason now? There it was. Not a request. An order. Nia stood slowly, aware of every eye tracking her movement. "Yes, Captain, but I'd like to understand." "Don't argue with me," he snapped. The word argue burned. "I'm not arguing," she said evenly. "I'm asking." Captain Hawley turned slightly, addressing the surrounding rows as if she weren't standing right there. "We have reason to believe a passenger may be causing a disturbance." "A disturbance?" Nia's chest tightened. "That's not true." Hawley looked back at her, eyebrows raised. "Lower your voice." Her voice hadn't been raised at all. "I haven't done anything," she said. A woman arose back, whispered, "What's going on?" Another passenger lifted a phone. Captain Hawley noticed. "Sir," he barked, pointing, "put that away." The phone lowered, but not before recording. Nia swallowed. "Captain," she said, "if there's an issue, I'd prefer to speak privately." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Privately," he repeated. "This is my aircraft. You don't get to dictate terms." The hush fell over the cabin. Nia felt her face heated from shame, but from disbelief. "I'm complying," she said, "but you're humiliating me." Hawley leaned closer. "You should have thought about that before being difficult." That word again. Difficult. It followed her everywhere. A flight attendant approached cautiously. "Captain, is everything all right?" Hawley didn't look at her. "This passenger is refusing to cooperate." Nia turned sharply. "That's a lie," gasps. The captain straightened. "Do you want to see refusal?" He pointed down the aisle. "Sit down and do not move." The words hit like ice water. "Excuse me?" Nia whispered. "You heard me." Her legs trembled. "On what grounds?" she asked. "I haven't broken any rules." Hale's face hardened. "You're becoming a safety concern." A safety concern. The phrase echoed louder than the engines ever could. A black man near the aisle shook his head. "Man, that ain't right." "Sir," Hawley snapped. "This does not concern you." "It does when it's wrong," the man shot back. More phones appeared. Nia stood frozen, not by command, but by fear of escalation. Her mind raced. "Stay calm. Don't give him what he wants." Hawley looked around. clearly irritated that the audience was no longer passive. "Flight attendants," he said sharply, "remain at your stations." One attendant hesitated. That hesitation mattered. Nia saw it, and for the first time, she realized he wasn't in control anymore. "Captain," the attendant said quietly, "maybe we shouldn't have." Holly snapped. "I will not be challenged on my own plane." That sentence changed everything. Nia lifted her chin. "You already are," she said. Silence. Every eye locked onto her. Holly stared, stunned by the audacity of her calm. "You have no authority to treat me this way," she continued, her voice steady, "and you know it." Hale's nostrils flared. "Sit down." "No," she said. The word dropped clean and clear. Phones were no longer hidden. They were raised, recording, witnessing. A murmur spread through the cabin. "She didn't do anything. This is messed up." "Let her sit." Hale looked around, realizing too late that the narrative had slipped from his grip. He turned red. "You're delaying this flight?" he snapped. "Everyone here can thank you." Nia met his gaze. "No," she said. "They can thank you." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then louder. Hale's jaw tightened. He turned sharply and stormed back toward the cockpit. The doors slammed. The plane sat motionless. Minutes passed. Then 20. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen," a new voice said, "come or female. This is First Officer Daniels. We apologize for the delay." Applause again. Nia finally sat down, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline had nowhere to go. The man across the aisle leaned over. "You okay?" she nodded. "I think so." "You've handled that with grace," he said. She smiled faintly. "I shouldn't have had to." By the time they landed, the video had already gone viral. Millions of views. Headlines forming before luggage hit the carousel. "Pilot accused of racial humiliation mid-flight." Nia didn't know that yet. She only knew her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. At the gate, 2 airline officials waited. "Ms. Thompson," one said gently, "we'd like to speak with you." Captain Hall wasn't there, but the absence spoke volumes. 2 days later, the airline held a press conference. Captain Hall stood beside executives, stiff and silent. An investigation had been completed. Findings presented. Words like unacceptable, conduct unbecoming, abuse of authority. Then the sentence that mattered: Captain Robert Hole has been suspended indefinitely pending termination. Gasps. Cameras flashed. Nia watched from her living room, wrapped in a blanket, exhaustion settling into her bones. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt seen. That night, she posted a single message online. "I didn't speak up to go viral. I spoke up so I could breathe." It was shared thousands of times, because everyone knew what she meant. Nia thought the noise would stop once the cameras did. She was wrong. The morning after the press conference, she woke up to silence so heavy it pressed against her chest. No flight engines, no murmurs, no intercoms, just her phone buzzing endlessly on the nightstand. She didn't reach for it right away. For the first time since the flight, she let herself feel it. The humiliation hadn't vanished with Captain Hale's suspension. It lingered in her shoulders, in the way her stomach tightened every time she replayed his voice in her head. "This is my aircraft." The words still made her jaw clench. She finally picked up the phone. Messages from strangers flooded her screen. Some were supportive. "You were brave. Thank you for standing up. My daughter watched this with me." Others were cruel. "You should have just complied. You embarrassed him," always playing the victim. Nia stared at those longer than she should have, because they sounded familiar. They sounded like every unspoken warning she'd been given her whole life. Don't make waves. Don't challenge authority. Don't be that woman. She set the phone down, and for the first time, she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just tears slipping silently down her face as the weight finally settled. 3 days later, she sat in a glass conference room at airline headquarters. Across from her, lawyers, executives, public relations consultants, all polished, all careful. "Ms. Thompson," one executive began, folding his hands, "we want to sincerely apologize for what you experienced." She nodded once. "I appreciate the apology." Another executive leaned forward. "We're reviewing our internal policies to ensure something like this never happens again." Nia met his gaze. "I've heard that before. The room shifted. She continued, calm but unyielding. What happened to me didn't start with one man. It started with a system that allowed him to believe he could humiliate a passenger and face no consequences. Silence. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. What would you like to see happen? Nia didn't hesitate. Transparency, training, and acknowledgement that race played a role. The PR consultant shifted in his seat. That last part is sensitive. Nia considerately tilted her head. So was being ordered to sit down and shut up in front of an entire plane. No one argued. Across the city, Captain Robert Hawley sat alone in his living room. The uniform that once defined him hung untouched in the closet. The airline hadn't fired him yet, but they didn't need to. The internet had already decided. He watched the same clip again. The moment she said no, he paused it there. For the first time, he noticed something he hadn't allowed himself to see before. He wasn't aggressive. She wasn't defiant. She was composed. And that, more than anything, had enraged him. His phone rang. Unknown number. Captain Hawley, a voice said, "This is the Federal Aviation Authority. We need to speak with you." His stomach dropped. A week later, Nia stood at another airport, different terminal, different airline. Same nerves. She caught herself gripping her boarding pass too tightly and forced her fingers to relax. The security officer glanced at her ID, then smiled politely. All set. Have a good flight. That was it. No pause, no suspicion, no power play. She walked away, heart racing, realizing how abnormal that simple moment still felt. On the plane, she sat by the window again. Habit. She buckled in and stared out at the runway. When the pilot's voice came over the intercom, her body tensed instinctively. "This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard. Neutral, professional, uneventful." He exhaled. Mid-flight, a young woman approached her seat hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you from that video?" Nia smiled gently. "I am." The woman's eyes shone. "I just wanted to say thank you. My mom always tells me to stay quiet when something feels wrong. But watching you," she swallowed, "it changed something for me." Nia felt a lump rise in her throat. "I'm glad," she said honestly. The woman nodded and returned to her seat. Nia looked out the window again, clouds stretching endlessly beneath the wing. Maybe this was why it mattered. Not the headlines, not the punishment, but the quiet shifts happening where no camera could see. The airline released its final decision 2 weeks later. Captain Robert Hale's license was revoked pending retraining and psychological evaluation. The statement was careful, but the message was clear. Authority without accountability was no longer protected. The comment section exploded. Some cheered, some raged. Nia didn't read them. She was busy living again. Months later, she stood on a stage at a small conference on workplace equity. No cameras, no viral clips, just people listening. "When I stood up on that plane," she said, "I wasn't trying to be brave. I was trying to survive with my dignity intact." The room was silent. "I didn't win because he was punished," she continued. "I won because I didn't disappear." Applause filled the space. Not loud, but meaningful. That night, Nia boarded one last flight. As she walked down the aisle, she felt calm. Not fearless, but grounded. She sat, buckled in, and closed her eyes as the engines roared to life. This time, no one told her to be quiet. No one told her to sit down. No one told her she didn't belong. The plane lifted into the sky, and for the first time since that day, Sidichi